That's fine. It's your show.
You know who I really like? Johnny Carson.
Oh, hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome to What is Comics. I am your host, JB Jones. I am not joined with Matt Sardo because today's episode is about Matt Sardo, about the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Sardo. It was a great talk, a great conversation with him. He is one of my close personal friends. We brought in editor-in-chief of Monkeys Fighting Robots, Anthony Composto, to help conduct the interview. So it's the two of us interviewing Matt Sardo. You know him, you love him. He is the showrunner. He is the creator of Indie Comics Creator Con. It's a great talk. Before we get into that, let's talk about the show at hand. We just did it. It's been, a couple of weeks since we've done this thing. My camera is going crazy, but that's what we're doing. It's independent, baby. Independent filmmaking. Independent comics, independent films. Indie Comics Creator Con happened, a couple of weeks ago, and I thought while I was walking around the show floor that the people needed to know the story behind the man who created the show. So here it is, Indie Comics Creator Con, Matt Sardo. Love you, brother.
Jim Henson has Rolf the dog on his hand, and he goes, he says to Arsenio, like, because Arsenio's got the dog pound, right? Like the woo, 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 woo. And everyone, and Rolf is like, woo, 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 right. And he goes, Arsenio, you son of a bitch. And then looks at the audience and goes, that's a compliment in my language. And that's funny. It's really funny. What's great about Rolf is he's the oldest of like the show Muppets, right? Like he's the, he was on the Jimmy Dean show. And so Rolf is like this old hand of the Muppet world. So he's seasoned and understands show business much more than any of the other characters. Rolf the dog. Love him.
My dad used to owned a kitchen cabinet business, and my grandfather owned it, and then he handed it down to my dad, where there was a big kitchen cabinet factory like the next town over, and we used to grab the seconds. And we used to get the cabinets cheap and then like fix them up and refinish them, and then they would put an ad in like the New York City newspapers, and then like all the landlords would buy the cabinets from us, and we would deliver them to all over the tri-state area and stuff. And there was one day I think we were in White Plains, and it must have been during the summer or something like that, because I was helping them do deliveries, or it was a weekend or something like that. But it was like overcast, and it was like late afternoon, and we finished like delivering the cabinets, and I think I got a tip because that's the only reason why I went as a kid. And then we turned on the radio, and it was like Jim Henson died, and like I remember every detail about that day because that's what happened on it.
Yeah.
I was wondering how that story was going to tie into the Muppets.
Tie into Jim Henson or anything, yeah.
It's tied in the darkest possible way.
Yeah. Jim Henson died. And then the second tower was hit. Yeah. Oh, God. Well, hey, Matt, who's the first artist creator that died that hit you that way?
I do remember being at I think it was, I don't know if it was Wizard World Chicago, I think, and they made the announcement that Michael Turner passed away at the show. Yeah, and that was fucked.
Damn.
But that was a rough one and stuff, because I don't think I knew any of the creator. I think I was new at the store, and I didn't really know too many people. But then you just see sadness, and you see people like hugging and crying and all this other stuff. And I was like, this sucks.
Yeah. And you decided to make a comic convention. Years later.
It wasn't based on that moment.
Well, I mean,
what traumatizing experiences can I instill into people's minds?
Yeah, these things, they compound. We want to fix the thing that we can't fix, and you want to fix comics by creating your own convention that people can afford and go to, and here you are.
Hey, I just figured it out that we don't have to fix comics, because comics aren't dying. They're just not buying your comic.
Well, that's very true. Listen. This is going to be a very
Hey,
interesting
where's the
interview.
graphic for the soapbox? Where's it's got to drop in?
No. I was
Sure.
gonna no. That's really interesting because if you read any interview from any time period from the inception of the comic books are dying, and we're still here. And it's been almost 100 years since the comic book, and it's not going away. It just changes. It changes form. That's one of the great things about the medium. Right? That's the great thing about all artistic mediums is they change and things happen and there's movements and different things. So you started reading comics when? In the late 80s, early 80s?
Late 80s, probably I'm trying to think, like, 'cause there was a shop right in my town and they did have the spinner rack, and I was into GI Joe, and I picked up, like, I think it was the before I even knew who Todd McFarlane was. I think the issue I picked up was the Todd McFarlane issue.
Okay. So you had paint the picture for us. You had an actual comic shop?
I worked
You go to?
I worked at a comic book shop when I was a kid.
Okay.
Really?
But
Yeah.
when did you start getting into comics?
So I was into baseball cards first, and I was collecting baseball cards, and then there was
Yeah, but how old were you?
I was probably like
Bring us back to little Matt. How old was little Matt when he got into baseball cards?
well, Little League started at 9, and so that's probably when I got into like sports. I know that, like, my parents' lawyer would give us box seats to the Mets once a year. So once a year I would go see the Mets, and that was probably like a 2-hour drive from where I grew up in upstate New York, and that was always really exciting to go there.
Yeah.
And also, like, to just, like, I always talk about, see the New York City skyline. Like, that's always exciting. And then to go to the game, and I just remember Shea Stadium, like, the outfield in the super cheap seats used to be filled with campers, and you could tell because they all had different color t-shirts. And so, like, the one group would have it'd be like 100 kids of yellow, 100 kids of orange, 100 kids of blue t-shirts, and they would just fill up the outfield seats. And I would always be like, because baseball is kind of boring sometimes when you're a little kid. You're like, I wonder what they're doing, and what camp is that, and how do I get to go to that camp? But I was collecting baseball cards, and I was spending my money doing that, and I was going into shops that had baseball cards, and some shops had comics as well. And when I was spending my money, I was like, oh, this is cool. Baseball cards are cool, and they are valuable and stuff like that. But there's comic books I buy them, and I get to read them, and I can look at the art and do things. And so then I transitioned over to comic books from baseball cards.
And when do you go from, because you're a Marvel kid, like I said, G.I. Joe and then Spider-Man and Todd McFarlane. I know you're like a disciple of McFarlane. When does that go into indie comics? Like, what is your indie comics origin story as someone who is now running an indie comics convention? Like, I'm assuming following McFarlane from Spider-Man to Spawn is a part of that, but also to a level of getting into like self-published works and underground works to, where you are now. Like, what's that origin?
Well, the one thing is I'm not an indie historian. I'm not a comic book historian. I like what I like, and I enjoy what I like. And
that's why I'm around. That's why Matt keeps me around. Is for stuff. Is for information.
I will establish that as I do surround my people. Like, I look at it like a presidential cabinet of like, I need people who can do things, but I like the friendships too. I mean, the friendships are there, but also it's still everybody does fit a purpose in my
He's saying that as like, I use you guys, but I like you. So it's fun.
Well, my Anthony, my first Secretary of State, I mean, he just didn't work out. The friendship wasn't there.
All right, I'm hanging up. I'm done. I'm out.
But no, when I had the comic book store was when, I guess that's when my appreciation or the start of like reading more and more indie comic books started, because I had to make orders. I had to order comic books, and so I go through the whole entire previous catalog and be like, okay, what's going on here? What's what are they going on? And I had different employees with different tastes, and they would put their recommendations for, and like like Lock and Key came out when I had my store, and like Walking Dead was in its heyday, and Invincible's going on, and then Mark Waid was doing his stuff at Boom, where like the hero
Irredeemable.
Irredeemable
Yeah.
and Unredeemable, or there was two of them.
Yeah. I don't remember the second one. Incorruptible. Yeah, there you go.
So like Boom was starting out doing their stuff, and so that's kind of where it happened, and that's where I also like started like I wouldn't have read stuff of Legends if I did have the previous catalog and put the order together. Because that was like a small indie self-published book. But yeah, the comic book shop was where things had, because people would be like, "Hey, I like this and I like this," and I also have to sell books that I own. So it's you have to learn, you have to read what you're selling and go from there.
Yeah. When do you start the comic shop? I guess like bring us to that point, right? If you're a kid, you're reading comics, you're obsessed with Todd McFarlane, Image comes out, you get Spawn. You're a Savage Dragon guy. I've seen a Savage Dragon action figure in your basement.
I do.
It's in the box. I almost stole it when I was there. So yeah. So what, like, Image Boom happens, right? And you're perfect age for it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was like the perfect age for it. I think there's a news clipping of me at a comic book shop when all the Image stuff breaks out. It's either that or like, so like you have Image Boom, you have like the death of Superman, you have Batman breaks his back, you have like Hal Jordan becomes a bad guy, like all that bullshit. And I'm trying to think of what else was going on in Marvel, but there was like kind of a big reset going on in the industry / the Image comics going on. So like it was a really hot time to be in a comic book shop and buying comic books. With like, yeah, I think like Carnage comes out at that time frame too. Like there was just crazy stuff happening. I'm trying to think of other.
Does that fuel you in your mind, in your adolescent brain? Does that fuel you to like be like, oh, this is a viable thing that I can do, so I'm gonna open a comic shop one day? Is that?
I'm sure if I did like the business model and the viable plan, I probably would have changed everything in my life. But no, my parents were entrepreneurs. Like they had the comic book shop, and then they didn't have the comic book. They had the cabinet store, and when we were in upstate New York, and my parents had a successful business, and my dad had this idea of pseudo retiring down to Florida because that's where my mom wanted to live. And so he built up the cabinet business, sold it. We moved to Sarasota, Florida, and we opened up a video store in Bradenton, Florida.
Oh, okay.
This is like 90, 91, 92, somewhere
around there. That's like comic book tangential, right? Like that's you're very close to comics at that point. So
yeah, so then we had the video store, and I was still buying comic books, and I worked a lot in that video store. I actually like was on the work release program from high school so that I could like go to high school for half a day and then go to work and do that. And I was definitely like, if there was a way of getting out of school, I was in it. And I was like, hey, get me out of school, because one of the things of moving around a lot, which my parents did, is like I had no friends, and like I was always restarting. And that's probably why I like comic books, is because those were like the friends that I had, because Spider-Man was always there, or monthly and stuff like that. So that's like the emotional baggage. But then my parents also were like entrepreneurs and did all these things. So then it was like, oh, my parents started their own business, I'll start my own business. So I got them to get a spinner rack at the video store. And then I like brought in back issues, because I had tons of back issues. And I tried to open up like a comic book shop in the back of the video store, which wasn't very successful because I didn't know anything about advertising or anything about that. Like all this stuff. It was me. I plopped some boxes down, and they had the spinner rack, and I was like, I have a comic book shop, and like, but nobody came in to buy stuff, and I didn't know what to do and all this stuff. But I'm also like, young and stuff.
How old?
Probably like 14, 15, something like
that. Okay. Yeah. So you don't know anything, and you've already started to like get into comics and do all that stuff. Timeline wise, because the other person that we can, like, Anthony and I know we can attach to Matt is Kevin Smith. When's Clerks come out? Like, where do your parents have the video store, and then Clerks is out, and you are?
Yeah, because Clerks is 94. So it's like right around the same time.
Clerks is 94. So we only had the video store for like 2 years, and because then Blockbuster. My parents didn't know about Blockbuster, and then like Blockbuster opens up, and it was we were next to a Publix, and Blockbuster opened up across the way, and like didn't work out, and then like they closed the business down, and they had to figure out like there was family drama and financial drama, and then we ended up moving back up to New York State, and we lived with my grandparents, and it was weird because my family lived in the basement, my little brother and sister, and my parents lived in the basement, and I lived upstairs with my grandparents and my aunt, and I had my dad's old room. It was very, very weird, and stuff, and I went to college. So I was freshman. So things were all messed up, and I basically was like, I'm not going to another school, and I got my GED. I was like, I just explained to my parents. I was like, listen, this is really messed up, and I don't know what I said to my parents, and I was like, I think I said I don't feel safe at school or something like that, and I was like, and I can take my GED and I'll be done with school, and I really hope my parents don't listen to this. But no, there really wasn't like now I have kids and I do these things. Like there was no motivating factor from my parents or my grandparents to be like, you should go to college. You should do this. Like, I think my grandfather was first generation, Italian American. Like I think his grandfather came over. Maybe my grandfather we came over with them, and then they had like a bakery in the city, and then there was a point in time where they moved from the city to upstate New York, and there was a big like that thing going on. And then like my mom's side of the family is just lots and lots of drama. Not lots and lots of drama, but just gonna take way long to explain.
Yeah.
But
you come from a side of like a family of entrepreneurship and self-starters, and we're going to figure this out. We'll make the thing that we want to have, or we'll make the thing that we think the community needs, right? Buying old stock and refurbishing like counters and stuff is not I don't think a normal person thinks that way. I don't think that way. It's like, oh, let me buy the old stock, I'll fix it up and then sell it for a profit. So like that side happens. You move. Now I'm jumping around because I know your life a little bit, but you go from upstate New York to California. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I go to college, and I'm a freshman in college, and I go through and I make some friends, and that was like the revelation of like I've been stuck in my whole entire high school. Really sucked because we moved around a lot, and I think I went to 3 different schools throughout high school, and so by year 3 out, by the 3rd time I bounced around, I was like, I'm out. But then college was like the revelation of like, holy shit, like all the cliques, all the other stuff of high school, the things that everything sucked. None of that fucking matters in college. Like you own your destiny in college. And so I was playing intramural sports. I was doing all these things. I became more of an outgoing kid, and because I made some friends and that played hockey, and we started playing hockey, and that's where kind of college is where like I really kind of like take ownership of hockey. I even run for like student senate in college just to be
so this is where the Matt Sardo we know today is born.
Yeah, that's right. We are the cabinet of Matt Sardo's mind. That's what happens. Yeah.
Just to beat out a popular girl, and then I quit after I won.
Yeah, that's right. That also tracks.
Yeah. And then I had a friend who was like, hey, I'm going out to California to go to chiropractic school. You want to go? And so this is where my other stupidity comes in. My favorite hockey team is the Devils, and my favorite goalie is Chris Terreri. And Chris Terreri, when my friend asked me this, Chris Terreri gets traded from New Jersey to San Jose. And I'm like, that's a fucking sign. And I just moved to California.
This is okay. So this was like literally one of the first things I wrote down is this trajectory that we're on here, because your story and like the jobs, your resume basically is so fascinating to me, because every time we talk, it's like, oh yeah, when I was a bartender, no, when I owned my comic book store, no, when I was a journalist and I was at the Super Bowl or the All-Star game, and now you know, and then into comics, you know, journalism and writing and the convention. Like, I was gonna say, like what was your career trajectory when you were a kid or a young man, like plotting this out to like where it got to, where it's like a cornucopia of awesome, like different things and experiences. Did you have like a trajectory? You were just kind of like,
so
where are the Devil's goalies at right now?
When they were like, you gotta go, when they were like, you gotta go to college and stuff, and I went to Orange County Community College, in Middletown, New York. They hand me a guide, and they're like, just a book. They hand me a book, and they're like, you know, you got to figure out what you want to do with your life. And so I scroll through the pages, and I screen past all the science and math degrees, and there was leisure services management, and I was like, that sounds like a good one. And it said at the bottom, it's like, you know, it tells you this course description, and it's like, then you get an internship. You go do something. You go somewhere. You go have, you know, go work on a cruise line for college credit. And I was like, that works. That works for me. You know, like,
this is supposed to be leisure. What are they talking about?
I was like, oh, this is a college degree with the path of least resistance. This sounds amazing. Yeah, that's funny because I've never been on a cruise, yet I was trying to get a degree to work on a cruise.
What do you think, I guess, to like tag on to Anthony's question, what do you think is the through line in retrospect? What do you think is the through line of your career or career choices? Is there like one single thread that you can kind of tie it to? Or is it kind of all over the world and following?
No, I mean, like,
whims?
There is a solid Forrest Gump element to my life. I mean, you have that thing. But there's a solid element of people telling me I can't do something, and then I go do it.
Oh, the opposite of Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is just told, oh, you can do this, and he does it. And you can't do this. Okay, I'll go and do this. That's what you've got.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, you can't move to California. I'm like, yeah, sure. That's where I'm going. See you guys, you know, and then, you know, people would be like, you know, like, oh, you'll be back in 6 months and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'll be damned if I'll come back in 6 months, you know. I'm going to make it work no matter what kind of thing. And then, you know, I was bartending at TGI Fridays, and the manager was a dick. And I was like, I can do your job. And he's like, no, you can't. And I was like, well, give me that management application. I was like, bing, 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 bing. And I was like, see, I just did your job, you know. But I was also like a 22-year-old kid, you know.
That seems very much all right. Let's transition, because this could go on forever, and we could just talk about your crazy stories about your life, which Anthony I've listened to over many adores at this point.
Yes.
But let's bring that into like today and now, and the convention, Indie Comics Creator Con. What's the inception? I know all this. I feel like I'm leading the witness in all of this because I was there. But
the inception is the inception is I published a comic book that was emotionally draining, and I can't stand the book now because I had an idea and a vision of what I wanted to do, and that vision isn't what the final comic book is. And then I tried to sell that book to people, and it really sucks being a writer at a convention trying to sell a book for $3 to $5 and make your money doing anything.
Right. And here's what happened. Because I know this in very specific terms. MegaCon got bought. So MegaCon is the big show in Orlando. Was kind of the biggest show to go to if you're in Florida or the Southeast. It was a great show. MegaCon gets bought, and the entire dynamic of the show changes. And the people who are selling books and trying to make comics independently get kind of shoved to the side. And that's right when you make a book. That's right when Monkeys Fighting Robots is transitioning from being like a multimedia thing to a comic book thing, all of it just kind of hits at the head. It's like, great, there's this great convention we can do all this stuff at. It gets sold. That doesn't, the weight of that side doesn't hold anymore. And you see the pitfalls of a comic convention. And
I also start making connections with more creators.
That's true.
More, and so I'm building the relationships in Florida, in the comic book community. Like that's where I meet you, and then I meet the other people that I met at like Tampa Bay Comic Con. Everybody who goes to MegaCon every year, and from there, and like I start listening to people and listening to their gripes and all these other things, and I was like, oh, we could do something with this. Like, again, I guess finding the need, like hearing the need, and being like, oh, we can do something there. Like and that's where it kind of starts. And this story I've told a million times. Like I signed paperwork to do it. You designed the poster for it, and then COVID hits, and now we're here.
Yeah. Matt and I used to live. We used to be neighbors. We used to live like across the street from each other, and it was great. We used to meet up, make comic books. I guess that's the real impetus for doing this particular podcast. Is I think a lot of people, when you get a guy who comes in and is like, oh, I'm gonna make a comic convention. A lot of that comes from fandom, and a lot of people who make conventions are fans of a thing and then come into it. You've approached it from the creator side, right? Indie Comics Creator Con, by creators, for creators, right? You are a creator. That's the whole impetus for me wanting to interview you for this thing, is to kind of let the people know who are coming to the show, or people who are potential guest or future guest of the show, to know that like we've got your back in that world a lot, because we've all been there and we all know what's going on. And that goes all the way up to you, right? Like, you've owned a comic shop for a long time. You know what it takes to sell comics, but then also selling comics at conventions, and how that really comes about.
And I wanted to ask about that specifically, actually, too, because you have been in the industry from so many different angles, from retailer to journalist to writer to now the convention guy. Like, the retailer aspect is what I really wanted to hit on. Like what specifically from your career as a retailer has come into you running IC3, like knowing how to promote and sell comic books? Like, what lessons you learned from that time in your life?
So with the store, I opened it in 2006, and I closed it 2011. So it was like 5 solid years. But that was also pre, during, and post Great Recession, or the great whatever was going on in the world. And then, they closed the train stop by my shop. They even dug up the road by my shop. And to make money selling comic books, you already had to hustle, and then everything else was going on in the world to make it even more difficult. So then that's where I was like, oh, we have to do events. We have to do some crazy shit. And because we can. I mean, also because it's my own business, and so we did some crazy shit. I had everybody dress up as zombies, and then I had a Rolodex of friends that I would say, like, hey, everybody call the news station right now and tell them that there's some crazy shit going on at the corner of Montrose and Ashland. And then the camera crew would show up and like, what is going on here? Why is there 500, why is there 50 zombies roaming the street, and what's going on? Or why is there a band playing outside? Like, why is there, a giant line of people at 9 o'clock in the morning on free comic book day to like get into the store? Like, what is going on? And so, I just started creating these quarterly events, and even then, that's when like I was like, man, if I could just do one event a year and then spend all my time promoting that one event, maybe that's where I need to be. Like that's what I should be doing. And that was my joking at the bar, because I was always bartending when I had my comic book shop. So I was always working 2 jobs when that comic book shop, because comic book shops still make a lot of money. But so I was always had a crew of people to kind of bounce ideas off of it. And that's the thing that I'm like really lucky with, is from California to Chicago to Florida, I've always been able to find a good group of friends, of supportive friends of my crazy ideas. And I moved to California when I was 19, and if I didn't have like a good group of friends to point me sort of in the right direction, who knows where where this crazy tale would have gone and stuff. But like I lucked out in California, and then I lucked out in Chicago, and then again St. Pete, Florida, I lucked out. And so thank you guys. All you.
Yeah, hey, you're the last group of crazy friends because now everything's online and you can talk to us constantly.
Yeah,
Every day.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're stuck with us now.
Yeah, right. This is just where it's at.
That's funny. Sticking on the theme of like IC3 and lessons learned that you're bringing forward, because we just did IC3 year 2 and on to year 3. What lessons did you specifically learn from year 1 going into year 2 that you approached year 2 any differently from the first year? Because this year, like I said, it was bigger. A lot of things went a little bit, smoother. There was a lot of different changes and stuff. So, like, was there anything specifically from year 1 at the end of last year's show? I don't know. We had like recaps and talks at the end of last year's show, but that you were like, okay, year 2, this is what we're doing different. This is how we're fixing.
I mean, the biggest thing is the outreach and how to reach people to attend, how to reach the attendees. And I think this will always be an evolving, problem. It's the same thing as like finding people to buy your comic book. Like, where do you find your people? Before they used to be on social media and you could like do things to get them to come to, like when I had the comic book shop, I would spend $500 promoting an event on Facebook and there'd be a line out the door, because I'd spend $100 and, it was like 25 cents a head to get people lined up at the door. And now if you spend $100 on Facebook, you're just basically lighting it on fire. And that's going to be the thing that is always going to be evolving, is where are the people and how do you find those people? And that's why this year's focus was on going to comic book shops, colleges, schools, and then the community of New Haven, and trying to like really establish us in there with free tickets and, and just building those relationships. Because it's one of the things that I've established that for some reason people don't believe me right away what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this show. This is the thing I'm doing. Like, and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm doing this show with lots of creators. It's going to be a really amazing time and you're going to have a lot of fun. And then people show up to it. It's like, oh, that was really a cool time. That was a really amazing time. Like, thank you very much. Like, I didn't believe you. And like now it's year 2. It's like, hey, we're doing the show again. And it was going to be an amazing time. We're going to have a lot of fun, blah, blah. And then a few more people come through. Like, holy shit, that was really a lot of fun. Like, thank you. I didn't believe you right away. I don't know if that is normal, if it's just me or if it's just business. Like,
you haven't done it 3 times. The thing I always say this all the time. It takes 3. It takes 3 for something to be a real thing. 3 comics, 3 issues of a comic, 3.
You go to 3. You had to go.
You got to kill 3 people to become a serial killer. So it's always
right. That's right. Yeah.
Crawl, like everything. For it to be a streak, it has to be 3 bar crawls, 3 bars.
Yeah. So like 3 is when it feels like a real thing. We haven't hit that with IC3. It's in the name, so I guess we're already at a head start. But IC33 is gonna be it, right? Like that's when you have actually established. That's when we've done the thing to make it a real event, right?
Yeah, no, that's the plan. That's the goal, and I'm excited for year 3. I'm hoping to, announce a date sometime soon. Very soon. I really, again, because now there's the internal clocks ticking again for the next convention, and it's only getting smaller. It's not. There's not going to be more time.
Because the show was Saturday night. We celebrated, and then when did the clock reset? Because that was the whole thing. That whole week leading up, you were like, if I can get through to the end of Saturday, like that's the end of the marathon. But then the marathon clock resets.
I think I give myself.
Was that like Monday morning?
I think I give myself like 7 days. Like
we talked Tuesday.
I know we talked, but like
no. We
clock.
talked seriously Tuesday.
Right, I know. I
was in a room by myself. The headphones were in. It was a very specific thing. And then I was on a flight on Thursday, and we talked at the airport.
You booked that flight on Tuesday.
Yeah. Listen.
Anthony and I are just freaking out that you booked the flight on Tuesday. for a Thursday flight. Like I don't know how you do that. That's gonna be a whole nother interview.
I mean, that was last year too. Like going to IC3 last year, like the day before my flight, Matt, you were like, I don't think Jamie's booked his flight yet. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be there. You should be.
Listen, I do everything as close to a possible thing. I like a plan. I like knowing what I'm going to do, but if it's close, that's better for me. I know I can gauge things. I live about a couple days at a time. It's beautiful. It works.
You can hit a deadline like nobody's business.
That's right. Because I work for 2 days at a time.
But you can also hit other people's deadlines like nobody's business. Like how many projects have you completed that were started by other people?
Like a lot. I don't know. I'm the second choice of person. I used to have the idea of a business card that said, Jamie Jones, your second choice of artist. I was never the first person that they asked. I was always the second person, and I was always the person that finished the project. But this podcast is not about me. Matt, what are your big like tenets for IC3? Right, like we planned the show, and I know you have ideas of what the show is and where it's going to go, and kind of what are your touchstones, the things that you will always have be, or as close that you can get to. What are you really striving to do with this convention?
Well, I think the first thing is always going to be like I look at it from a creator, and then I look at like how can I make this show I don't think the word's convenient for, but how can I make this show?
I can answer this for you because I know what you're trying to say.
Work for you. No, but how can I make this show work for you?
Yeah.
Because the first thing I say is like affordability, but then the next thing is like time frame. Like people are like, hey, this should be like a 2-day show, but like, does that work? Does it work as a 2-day show? Like, can the creators that I want come to the show do that with travel and time and commitment and all this other stuff and still make the show work? Like, so those are the aspects that I look at. And then I just look at like people's body of work. And again, I talk about work ethic, or I talk about like my parents owning a small business and like their commitment to a work ethic and like building things on their own. And by looking at somebody's Instagram profile or how they conduct themselves through emails, like I can tell whether or not like a creator is like committed to the thing.
Yeah.
And so like that's the stuff that like inspires me, and then I'm like, okay, I want to make this person succeed. Or I see their stuff and I'm like, okay, they're doing it. They're doing the thing, and I want to help them do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You constantly, I mean, we have this conversation all the time. This is very internal, but I feel like that's kind of what this is, and what this is, we're getting in the weeds of stuff where you will text me cost of other conventions and you'll be like, what, this show costs this much? And I'm like, that's how much shows cost. You're like, oh, that show's not for everybody then. And like, that's all you text me is that show's not for everybody. And I go, yeah, Matt, you're the only person who's charging. What I find so interesting about your mindset for what this convention is and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to move about the world in this way is you think and consider this show as this international. I guess now we're international, right? We had people from Canada coming in. They are not from our nation, but you're getting people to come in all over the country. People are flying in from California. They're flying in all over. We had no less than 5 or 6 people who flew in from California to the show, and people are coming in all over the country. We had people from Texas. We had people coming in all over. You're still charging the cost of a table is still like a local show, and keeping it this local kind of fair cost. And I mean fair cost, not in terms of like a Saturday morning market fare, right? That's what the show costs. And as close as we can get to that number, that seems to be a big thing for you. Trying to get people, allowing people to earn out, I think is huge, and not having to earn out. Some shows are $450, $500 for a table, and then you have a hotel room on top of that, and then you have food expenses on top of that, right? Like you're looking at $1,500 in the hole when you go to a convention, and you have tried very hard to keep it as low as you possibly can, right? Like, and that's very good.
Well, that could be the thing with, I don't know if there's a question at this point in time, but I'm interrupting you at this point.
No, interrupt me. This is your episode.
But since everybody like airs their grievances out on social media,
yeah,
I see which I'm not the biggest fan of, by the way, but I can see creators having hard times. I can, and so my thing is that a creator's like, oh man, I tabled here, I lost money. I tabled here, I lost money. I tabled 3 times in a row, I lost money. Like they're like, I table one more time and lose money. I'm out. I'm out of the. I'm like, they could be on the cusp of making the thing that makes the thing that keeps them going. And I was like, I don't want to be the end of their comic book career. I want to be the person that inspires them to make their next project.
Yeah.
Can I go back?
No.
Just because you. Oh. I'm glad that you harassed me.
Who are you asking permission from?
I am so glad that you harassing me is now like a matter of public record.
Yeah, that's right. This is for people who are joining. This is how this relationship works. Matt and Anthony have this brother relationship, but when I make fun of Matt, he will
make fun of
attack Anthony. It doesn't make any sense, but it is the way that it works.
It is the way that works. But because what you were just touching on was, it speaks to a deep love and a passion for comics, and kind of like what we were talking about earlier is you had so many like directions in your life, like you were again sports, retail, comics, film, you've done all this stuff. Like, can you speak to why, like how and why you settled on comics as like, this is what I'm putting my energy behind, as opposed to the sports or the film or the other mediums? You're like, no, I want a career in comics. I'm going to do journalism. I'm going to do a convention. Like, what is it about comics specifically?
Well, he's a mediocre goalie.
Well, that's a play sports.
He gets in fights and gets suspended.
Happy Gilmore-esque fights. He gets in Happy Gilmore-esque fights and gets suspended. So yeah, my sports career ended.
One game without incident. I went back yesterday, and the guy that I punched in the face a lot, he came back and wanted to get punched in the face again. And like, I promised my kids I wasn't going to punch him in the face. So the guy came up and I was just like, man, I promised my kids I wasn't going to punch this guy. But he apparently didn't learn his lesson the first time.
Did you punch him in the face again?
I didn't punch him in the face. I didn't.
The power of children.
He was definitely crowding the crease and was pushing me. And I was like, God, what's this guy doing? I'm just sitting there. I'm like, man, I'm just doing my time. I don't want to get done with this game.
But you could have, like, you did the sports journalism thing, because obviously, like, you can't be on the field or on the ice without getting in trouble. But like, you were serious enough that you were covering All-Star games and Super Bowls and stuff like that, and then you pivoted back to comics.
I did. Well, actually, so multiple pivots back to comics. When I moved to Chicago, after. So I was in California from 95 to 2002. I was like 26 at that point in time, I think, in my life. 26. And I was like, okay, I finally was like, okay, because in California, I tried to go back to college multiple times. So I'd go back for a semester or two and be like, I'd do the thing. And then I'd be like, why am I doing this? I actually had a professor say, like, if you don't know why you're in college, you probably shouldn't be in college right now. And I was like, I don't know if that was the best advice, but like, I was like, that's great advice. And I was like, dropping out, like, until I figure out why.
I think that is good advice. I wish I'd got that advice.
I think it's pretty good advice too.
Yeah.
So, but when I moved to Chicago, Chicago was very exciting, and being in the city was very exciting in a different way than than San Francisco and Oakland. And I had to, the city just jazzed me up, and I was ready to conquer it and do all those things. And maybe I was just more mature and stuff. And so I went back to college. And just so you know, when you go back to college late and they make you take a math test, like you got to start way back at the beginning. And I think it was within a year. I'm like 26, and I went through like, because I didn't remember anything, I had to take all of high school math all over again within like 1 year. So I kind of did the not Happy Gilmore, but I did the Billy Madison thing,
yeah.
where it's like, and then just went through and took all those maths, and then I'm trying to think of where I ended up in college math, but it was like there was like 2 years of my brain just being like, we're gonna do math is the best, and like it was insane. But I went back to college, and then I got my associate's degree, and I was going to go to a journal, and I was in the journalism program, and I was interning at Northwestern, and I was on their news program, and like a lot of cool things were happening. And then, and that's also when I got back into comic books, was moving to Chicago, because the Graham Cracker Comics was right downtown next to next to my college, and next to the restaurant that I worked at. And so I was and I was bartending, and I was making a shit ton of money bartending, and I could buy comic books again. So that was like that was the point where I was like, where you reach that point where you're like, oh shit, I paid all my bills, I paid my rent, do the stuff, and then I have this pile of money left over as an adult, and I don't know what to do with it. And then you burn it on whatever your hobby is. You start blowing your money on your hobby, and I really dove back in the comic books hard. And so I was having like the conversations of like, do I go into journalism and sports talk journalism, and like, what do I do? And if I wanted to like go down the path of sports journalism, I'd have to move to the middle of nowhere, Illinois, Decatur, Illinois, and cover high school football, and then work my way up to it. And I'd have to be poor and do that. And I was like, and I was talking, and again, the stupid parents entrepreneurism in me was like, well, if I'm going to be poor and I'm going to follow my passion, why don't I just be poor and open up a comic book shop and in Chicago, as opposed to like covering sports in Decatur, Illinois. And so then that's when I opened up the comic book store in Chicago. And then after I closed the comic book store, then I finished my degree at a early 30s at Northeastern. But yeah, that was the college thing was crazy. But the coolest aspect of college for me, and I recommend this for a lot of people, is go to college like a lot through multiple decades. Because when I started college, there wasn't computers. They were still teaching typing class. And then when I like finished college, I was on Adobe Premiere editing my videos and making films. And I do remember when I was like at OC first, I was helping this girl like cut film and tape it and do all that stuff, like traditional editing. And then like I also did a photography class where like I was in a dark room and like doing traditional film that way. And then like on the other end, I'm like doing digital film and digital photography. And like, so I don't know if we're going to have that much of a difference in a college experience.
Yeah, not anymore. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to swing as heavy as it did for you, but
I like that. The takeaway here is that we have all of this because you did not want to go to Decatur, Illinois. You really slammed them hard multiple times in that answer.
No, it smells there. It's a horrible place.
Since we were just talking about journalism, it's actually a good segue. What interview that you've done, either against sports, comics, film, TV, like, do you note as having had like the biggest impact on you, either professionally or personally? Like, who have you spoken with that you're like, that stuck with you the longest?
Well, when he would come to my house over COVID and talk to me about comic books and things, and he would get me riled up, and he would get me on my soapbox, and I would talk the talk, and it was really great. I think that's Matt's best interviews.
It's just
the private ones,
not asking
the private ones. Yeah, the private ones, the personal ones.
Yes, the ones that, yeah.
Oh,
that's great.
Where's there's one Charles Tillman of Chicago Bears. He was nominated for the Walter Payton Award during the Super Bowl that I went to, and I like that interview because he came off stage and I just like ran up to like where he was going out a door in like an alley of a building. And I was like, "Hey, do you have like 5 minutes?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And like I got that interview. Um, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, is like my favorite one because he was talking about being a journalist student and he interviewed Martin Luther King Jr. And like that story like gave me like chills. So there's that one. Um, I know that when I interviewed Todd McFarlane for the first time for the Image 20 year, I think it was the Image 20 year expo that they had. I talked to some journalists in Chicago and tried to get really prepared for this. And that's where I just talked to him about baseball, and he just went nuts and just went crazy, and it was like it was a really fun interview, and he's just really intense. But yeah, there's been a few. I mean, the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell is like the most intimidating person ever. The way I was like, "Hi, I'm Matt Sardo from Sports Talk Florida. I'm here to interview," and he's like, "Hey, Matt Sardo," and he like stared me in the eye and like shook my hand, and I was like, the way he did that, I was like, "Oh shit, this is real. Like this is pro level stuff," and I was like, I better have my A game for that one. And so there's been some like really cool experiences, but I think it has to be the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar one because I think he's such a unique person, from his basketball career to then like being a student of Bruce Lee and then all the stuff that he did prior to that. Like I said, interviewing Martin Luther King. I think as far as like a historical person, I think he was probably the best interview.
Hey, is it time? I feel like it's time. I feel like it's time for the last questions. Matt, you're going to get the last questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
So, in lieu of you not bringing anything to IC3 and also IC3 closing out, typically the first question on these general questions is, what are you bringing? But you're not bringing anything to IC3, but your beautiful chiseled jaw. And that's not happening for another year. So what was your favorite memory of IC3 this year?
Oh man, favorite memory of IC3. There's a lot of stupid things that happened, but funny. Oh man,
It was Anthony's wife yelling at you.
Yeah, me almost dumping 10 pizzas. I mean, there's a lot of stupidity going on, but like Drink and Draw was really awesome. Like I felt like it was bigger than last year.
Yeah,
and that was a really cool thing to be. And it's just the smiles. It's what I missed about what I missed most about the comic book stores. Everybody who came into the comic book store always came in happy or came in sad and left happy because this was their happy place, was coming to the comic book store. So I will say the favorite thing about the show is the smiles and people just being happy. Like I created this place and people came there and they had fun and were happy. And like, I'm happy that they were happy.
There is an element of you that Anthony and I have talked about a lot, which is, and I know you know this about yourself, so it's not a surprising thing and it's not a telling thing, but you have this kind of this persona, this element where you're just like, oh, wherever I'm going to be, that's where the party is. Like, we don't have to plan a party. I will show up, I will be there, and that's the party. And that's really special. I got the immense privilege of going to Costco with Matt Sardo over the week before the convention, and he doesn't not know anybody. He may not actually know the person, but he's just like, hey, what's up? How are you? You having a good day? You doing good? How's everything going with you? Sure, I'll try this weird yogurt that you've got.
No, I never try any of that stuff.
Listen, he does. Don't let him tell you otherwise.
Jamie was there. He saw it.
I was there. I was at Costco. Yogurt. I saw you take yogurt.
Lies, propaganda.
It is. But that's who you are, right? Like, that's how those events, the drink and draws, the after party, everything is just like, where's Matt? There's going to be some doers. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
That's
That's from working on the restaurant industry. I think if you become very
it's not.
compassionate.
It is. I understand where you're coming from. It's not. It is fundamentally like kind of who you are, right? And it's there's I know a bunch of people in the restaurant industry. I know a bunch of bartenders. I hang out with them. I go partying with those people. There is a different element when hanging out with you and partying with you. Do not sell yourself short on that one. That's a Matt Sardo thing.
It's not the jobs that put that into you. It's that part of you that made you successful at being a bartender and a comic shop owner and a convention guy. It's the other way around.
Sure.
Thank you, Jen.
For sure. That all being said, what's the weird art tool you grab for all the time, Matt?
Oh, it's right here. I finally bought one, but I would always look this up and just look at it a lot. The color wheel.
Oh, yeah.
So when I'm doing stuff and designing images for IC3 or other things, I love color theory. I like it a lot. Jody Belair, she's amazing. But yeah, the color wheel. I love the color wheel.
There you go. Are you
an answer?
That's an actual answer. That was a great answer. Are you a feeling or schedule creator?
Oh, what do you think? What do you think?
Listen, I think you are a feeling creator, and I think you have stuck to a schedule because you're an adult and you have 3 children, and a lovely wife that would.
So it's the feeling.
Listen, you have a calendar on your fridge. I feel like you're.
That's a wife. That's a wife.
Okay.
No, I also have like a cozy app because of the wife. And I have a calendar app as well. But no, like it's definitely the gut feeling of I want to go here. And Anthony will attest to that. That like they're like, what the F is Matt doing now? And even Brooke is like, if you go rogue ever again.
Oh yeah, no. I just kind of like let you do your thing and I just play catch up. But no, man, my wife was very much like, don't you do that shit to me.
But I mean, you've seen the list and everything like that. Like to be prepared for events like this, like you have to be somewhat organized because even there's just too many moving parts.
Yeah. So talk about the pizza that was organized. That was.
Listen, that's a story that just needs to stay between people because I wanted to be
Jerome drawing that picture. I will give Jerome one critique: is he did not draw me mad enough.
Also, it's on public record. The panel is on YouTube for people to see.
The panel is on YouTube. Yeah, everyone go watch
it. You can't see the incident.
But we can see the rage in James'
We can
eyes.
see me, how mad I am at you for interrupting the panel. Everyone go watch that panel. It's really informative and really great, and Matt comes and interrupts it for pizza in the middle of it. I watched it. I watched that one moment. It was fun. What's your proudest moment as
next
a
year
comic creator?
When I interrupt the panel dressed as Harpo Marx.
See, and then I'll like it.
Should we dress up as the Marx Brothers for the show next year?
Oh, listen, maybe that would be very fun. I'm not a big costumer. That's not true. But I'm not a big cosplay guy when it comes to conventions. But if we were the Marx Brothers, I'd be down. Yeah. Who is your biggest influence, Matt?
Ooh, biggest influence. That's Tom Cruise from Cocktail.
It's perfect. What stories interest you? Someone's coming to IC3. They're giving you a book. What's grabbing your eye? What's really selling for you?
This genre really hit during COVID, but I really love the drunk detective genre.
Okay, interesting.
The guy from The Wire, like that's like. I mean, honestly, like the first guy is Sherlock Holmes, but he was more opioids. But
right.
Like,
do you consider is like Columbo drunk detective genre?
I don't think he's.
I don't think he's not drinking, but he's always like,
I mean, he
you know,
could.
for one more thing.
He's adjacent. Like he is on the spectrum. But McNulty from The Wire is like the perfect example of a drunk detective.
See How You Run. Have you seen that? See How You Run.
Which one?
See How You Won. See How You Run. Sam Rockwell, very much a drunk detective.
No, but now I'm gonna.
You'd like that one? Check that one out.
But BBC has like a million of them.
Oh, listen, Broadchurch, get out of here. It's so good.
Yeah.
Miller.
That's why, like, what is it? Not Wild Horses, Slow Horses. Slow Horses on Apple TV is amazing, and there's several drunk detectives on the show.
Interesting. The drunk detective genre. I like it. And Matt,
so bring your drunk detective comics to IC3 next year, people.
Yeah. I'm like formulating something right now.
Listen. I saw a clown with a cigarette.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. Yeah, I've been slowly working on a circus clown that goes around, and that's the kind of formula of it is he's riding on a train and he goes to these different towns and he's a armchair detective and just likes a bunch of crime novels, so he starts solving crimes in different towns that they go to as the circus.
Napper here and there.
Yeah,
you know,
just make him drunk. And he's a clown. That's not that hard. It's not that hard to just make a clown drunk.
It's not hard to make a sad clown drunk. Matt, final question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Who's your favorite Disney princess?
Ooh.
Baby.
Aurora from Sleeping Beauty.
There you go.
Ooh. Surprising.
No, it has the best animation of all the Disney princess movies.
So you got Evelyn Earl doing the backgrounds of that, and they're gorgeous.
There's a dude fighting an amazing dragon in there.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
And Aurora doesn't have like blonde hair. She has more of like a dirty blonde hair.
Yeah.
You know?
Like your 3 daughters. And your wife.
Yeah. They are cute kids, and I am excited. Like now that again we talk about the 3s, things happen in 3, or things aren't real until they're 3s. Like, you know, I did a family photo at IC3 last year, and then I did a family photo this year. I'm looking forward to those photos throughout the years of my kids coming to the show, and like that's going to be something really cool.
Well, and your oldest was running around with a camcorder, filming some stuff.
I have it right here.
Do we have those? Do we have that footage? I can't wait to see it. Yeah,
I have the footage right here. I think it's not very steady, but I think I can get a bunch of people waving at the camera. I can cut it into like just people waving.
Amazing.
Smiling.
That was a good time.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for putting this together.